Every trader wants to master the market, but few ever stop to ask, what if the real battlefield isn't out there, but in here? Behind every candle, every signal, every perfectly drawn setup, there's a mind searching for meaning, for control, for certainty. In a world that offers none, we study charts, indicators, and price action. But the market doesn't move because of lines. It moves because of human emotion. Greed, fear, hope, doubt. They're not just forces that shape price, they're forces that shape you. And if you don't understand your own mind, the market will expose it for you again and again until you finally listen. This isn't another tutorial, it's a mirror, a slow reflection on the patterns you can't see, not in the charts, but in yourself. Because trading is not about outsmarting the market. It's about outgrowing the version of you that keeps repeating the same mistakes. So in this episode of Mind Over Markets, we're going to explore two silent killers of swing traders, boredom trades, and overinterpretation. The trades you take when you can't stand still and the meanings you invent when the silence gets too loud. This is not about strategies. It's about the psychology behind the strategy, the part no one sees but everyone trades from. Have you ever opened a trade? Not because your setup appeared, but because you were tired of waiting. You tell yourself it's still within your plan. You convince yourself the market might be about to move. But deep down, you know the truth. You entered the trade because you were bored. For many swing traders, boredom is not just an emotion. It's the most silent destroyer of discipline. It doesn't shout like fear, and it doesn't seduce like greed. It simply whispers, do something. The market is quiet. Your charts are clean. There's nothing to do, and that's precisely the problem. We live in a world addicted to stimulation. Every scroll, every ping, every candle that flickers tells your brain that something should happen. But swing trading lives on the opposite frequency, the rhythm of stillness, of waiting, of letting probabilities unfold over time. And when a trader's environment is built on instant feedback, this waiting feels unbearable. It's not the lack of opportunity that hurts. It's the feeling of missing out on life itself while you sit watching nothing move. So the mind begins its little rebellion. It starts searching, scanning every pair, every time frame. It begins to see things that aren't really there, patterns, level signals, tiny sparks of hope that maybe there's something to act on. You tell yourself you're being proactive. You say, I'm refining my analysis. But what you're really doing is feeding an anxious brain that can't stand uncertainty. The boredom trade is born in that space, the space between wanting control and not having it. You enter the trade. Your heart beats faster. Finally, something is happening again. That small dose of dopamine floods your system. It feels like progress, but it's not. It's just movement without meaning. And then, the outcome. Sometimes you win, and that's the worst thing that can happen, because it reinforces the illusion that boredom can be solved by trading. Other times you lose and you call it a lesson. But the real lesson is not in the chart, it's in the silence you couldn't handle. You see, boredom is not the absence of activity, it's the absence of internal peace. When your self-worth depends on constant action, the market becomes your stage to prove that you exist. But swing trading doesn't reward the performer, it rewards the observer. The best trades don't come from chasing excitement. They come from not caring whether something is happening right now. They come from being grounded enough to wait for clarity and disciplined enough to act only when it arrives. The greatest swing traders share a strange characteristic. They are calm to the point of being boring themselves. They don't chase the market. They let the market reveal itself. They don't measure success by how many trades they take, but by how many trades they don't take. To the outsider, that looks like laziness. To the professional, it's mastery. Because in the stillness, you start to see things others miss, not patterns on a chart, but patterns in yourself. When you watch long enough, you start to recognize the subtle urge to act, the twitch of impatience, the whisper that says, maybe this one's good enough. That whisper has cost traders fortunes. But here's the paradox: boredom is not your enemy. It's your teacher. It's there to show you how uncomfortable you are with doing nothing. It's there to expose your addiction to control, to remind you that your value as a trader is not determined by how many positions you have open. True swing trading is psychological endurance. It's not about predicting the next move, it's about surviving the space between moves. The professional knows this. They build rituals to hold their focus during the silence journaling, reviewing setups, walking, reading, reflecting. Anything but trading without reason, because they understand that most mistakes don't come from ignorance. They come from boredom disguised as productivity. So the next time you feel that restless energy when the market is flat and your mind starts to wander, ask yourself a simple question: am I seeing an opportunity, or am I manufacturing one to feel alive? That single moment of awareness could save you not only a trade, but your entire sense of balance as a trader. Boredom is a mirror. If you have the courage to look into it, you'll discover what kind of trader you really are. Every trader wants control. Control over their entries, control over their exits, control over their emotions. But the deeper truth is this: the more we try to control the market, the less control we have over ourselves. Swing trading exposes that paradox in the purest way. Because for days, sometimes weeks, you have to sit inside uncertainty. You can't force a setup to appear. You can't force price to move your way. All you can control is your reaction. And that's exactly what makes it unbearable. Human beings were not designed to live with uncertainty. Evolution taught our brains to reduce risk as fast as possible, to find patterns, to act, to do something. When danger appeared, movement meant survival. So now when your trading screen is calm and nothing's happening, your brain interprets that silence as danger. It whispers you're missing out, you're falling behind, you need to act. That's not intuition. That's ancient wiring. The boredom trade is the modern expression of a prehistoric brain. It's the hunter's reflex, but in the wrong jungle. In trading, the enemy isn't outside you. It's the urge within you to force the outcome. You open your chart and start adjusting your lines. You convince yourself this new level means something. You reinterpret your rules so that today's setup kind of fits. You call it flexibility, but it's not flexibility. It's the mind's rebellion against uncertainty. The need for control is seductive. It makes you feel powerful for a moment until the market reminds you who's really in charge. Every trader knows this pain, the slow creeping regret that follows an impulsive entry, the sick feeling when you realize you weren't trading your system, you were trading your emotions. And the cruel part is that it never feels irrational in the moment. It feels logical. It feels justified, because the mind is a master storyteller. It can spin any impulse into a strategy. You might say to yourself, the RSI looks extended, or the volume confirms it. But deep down, the reason is much simpler. You wanted to feel in control again. In truth, you weren't trading the chart. You were trading the discomfort of waiting. The best swing traders learn to recognize this pattern early. They understand that control is an illusion. The only thing they can truly master is their response to uncertainty. They build systems not to predict, but to protect themselves from their own impulses. Think of it like building a fence around your discipline. A trading plan is not just a technical framework, it's a psychological boundary. It exists to protect you from your lower self, the one that can't sit still, the one that confuses movement with progress. If you've ever felt the urge to just take a quick trade, that's your lower self talking. It's not your strategy. It's your biology. Your mind hates randomness. So when it sees it, it tries to impose order. That's how overinterpretation begins. The next layer of psychological sabotage we'll explore later. But before we get there, understand this simple truth. Your performance as a swing trader is not determined by your ability to forecast the market. It's determined by your ability to withstand uncertainty. The longer you can sit in that void without trying to fill it with meaningless action, the more powerful you become. Because patience is not passive. Patience is pressure held in silence. Every moment you resist the urge to trade out of boredom, you build mental equity. You train your nervous system to operate in uncertainty. You build a new definition of control, one that comes from surrender. Yes, surrender. Not giving up, but letting go of the illusion that you can force timing. You can't make the market pay you. You can only make yourself ready to receive when it finally does. The irony is, once you stop trying to control every outcome, you start to see the market more clearly. Your mind stops projecting. You begin to notice rhythm, flow, context, not noise, but narrative. Because the market's truth only reveals itself to the mind that's quiet enough to hear it. When you trade from fear or boredom, you're loud inside. You're thinking, hoping, grasping. But when you trade from patience, you become silent. And in that silence, the chart begins to speak. That's where real control lives, not in your mouse hand, but in your mental posture. You don't need to do more to regain control. You need to feel less need to control. That's the paradox most traders never learn. They keep fighting the market, fighting their strategy, fighting themselves instead of understanding that mastery is not about dominating the chaos, but coexisting with it. Control doesn't come from resistance, it comes from alignment. When you align your expectations with the reality of uncertainty, you stop bleeding energy. You stop burning mental capital on every tick of the candle. You let go. You breathe. You become a witness again. And the boredom trades, they lose their power over you. Because the moment you realize you don't have to trade to feel in control, you reclaim your edge. You become the calm eye in the storm, watching chaos move around you while you remain still. That's what true control feels like. It's not action. It's awareness. There's a moment every trader knows too well. You stare at the chart long enough, and patterns begin to appear. A head and shoulders forming maybe. A hidden divergence. A secret message the market seems to whisper only to you. It feels profound, like insight, but most of the time, it's illusion. What you're seeing isn't the market revealing truth. It's your mind trying to create order out of randomness. We humans are pattern-making machines. Our ancestors survived because they could detect threats, the shape of a predator in the tall grass, the rhythm of footsteps in the dark. The brain that found meaning in noise lived longer. But that same gift becomes a curse in trading because the market is mostly noise, random movement dressed in meaning. And when you're waiting too long for clarity, your brain starts drawing patterns that aren't there just to silence the discomfort of not knowing. That's how overinterpretation begins, not from greed or arrogance, but from the simple human need for certainty. You zoom in on the candle's stretch lines across the chart, redraw support and resistance to fit your story. Every minor bounce becomes a signal. Every flicker of volume becomes confirmation. You're no longer analyzing, you're hallucinating coherence. And it feels good. It gives your mind a sense of control again. You've found a narrative. You've given chaos a name. But reality doesn't bend to your narrative. The market doesn't care what pattern you see. It doesn't know you exist. Overinterpretation is the psychological twin of boredom trading. One is acting without reason. The other is reasoning without reality. Both stem from the same root, a restless mind that cannot sit with uncertainty. Think about it. When the chart is unclear, what do you feel? Tension, anxiety, the pressure to explain, to find something, anything that makes sense. Your brain hates open loops. It craves closure, so it closes them prematurely. It forces patterns to appear not because they exist, but because the mind needs peace. That peace is short-lived, because as soon as the trade fails, you reopen the chart, redraw your lines, and tell yourself, I just misread it. But in truth, you never read the market. You read your own desire. Overinterpretation turns the trader's greatest strength analysis into their greatest weakness. It's why two traders can look at the same chart and see completely different things. The chart is neutral, but the observer is not. We bring our fears, our hopes, our beliefs into the screen, and the market becomes a mirror reflecting not truth, but projection. The swing trader especially is vulnerable to this trap because time moves slowly. Each candle can last for hours, and in that space, the imagination fills the gaps. The longer you wait, the more your brain whispers, maybe this consolidation is accumulation. Maybe this retracement is just a healthy pullback. Maybe is not a strategy. The disciplined trader learns to separate observation from interpretation. Observation is what you see. Interpretation is what you think it means. The gap between the two is where psychology lives. When your observation becomes colored by emotion, you lose objectivity. You start searching for data that confirms your bias. That subtle psychological filter called confirmation bias. You stop asking, is this valid, and start asking, how can I prove I'm right? And once your mind wants to be right more than it wants to be precise, you're already lost. Because markets don't reward ego, they reward neutrality. The trader who survives is not the one who's always correct, but the one who's least attached to being correct. Overinterpretation feels like intelligence, but it's actually insecurity dressed as insight. It's the intellect working for the ego. And the more intelligent you are, the more dangerous it becomes because your brain can rationalize anything. That's why so many smart traders struggle longer than they should. They don't lose to randomness. They lose to their own need for meaning. But here's the shift that changes everything. You don't need to understand every move. You only need to respond to the ones that fit your plan. Let the rest be noise. Let randomness stay random. You don't have to decode chaos to profit from structure. When you stop forcing meaning, clarity finds you naturally. It's like staring at a blurry image. The harder you focus, the more distorted it gets. But when you relax your eyes, the picture emerges. The same principle applies to trading. The calmer your mind, the clearer the market becomes. Because you're no longer projecting patterns, you're perceiving probabilities. So next time you find yourself redrawing levels, reinterpreting a signal, or convincing yourself that it still counts, pause and ask, am I analyzing the market? Or am I analyzing my need for certainty? That single question can stop a cascade of bad decisions. The truth is, every chart tells two stories, one about price and one about you. The first is data. The second is psychology. The difference between amateurs and professionals is that amateurs trade the first story while being controlled by the second. Professionals trade the first story by mastering the second, because they know you don't trade the market you see, you trade the meaning you assign to it. Overinterpretation isn't just a cognitive error, it's a spiritual one. It's the refusal to accept that some things cannot be known in advance. And in trading, that acceptance is where freedom begins. When you stop trying to read the market like a prophecy and start reading it like a probability, you evolve from gambler to strategist. You stop asking what will happen and start asking what could happen and how will I respond. That's the language of professionals. That's the mindset of survival. Because in the end, the market doesn't punish ignorance, it punishes attachment. Let go of the need to know, let go of the need to interpret. Stay with what is real: price, context, probability, nothing more. In that space where emotion fades and awareness sharpens, you stop seeing ghosts in the noise. You start seeing truth in simplicity. And that finally is where trading becomes art. There comes a point in every trader's journey when the chase quiets down, when the thrill of entry fades and what's left is awareness. It doesn't happen suddenly. It happens after enough frustration, enough confusion, enough realization that the enemy was never the market. It was always the mind, the restless, impatient, ever-interpreting mind. Trading has a strange way of turning into a mirror. At first you think it's about strategy, then you realize it's about self-control, and eventually you understand it's about surrender. Not surrendering to loss or chaos, but to reality itself. Acceptance is the highest form of trading intelligence because it removes the illusion that you can force outcomes. It teaches you to stop negotiating with uncertainty and start collaborating with it. Every moment you resist what is happening, you create tension. Every time you demand that the market behave a certain way, you're trading from ego. But when you accept what's in front of you without judgment, without desperation, you unlock a level of calm that most traders never find. That calm is not apathy. It's precision. It's the clarity that comes when emotion no longer distorts perception. Think about this. Every tick of the market carries information. But information only becomes wisdom when filtered through patience. The impatient mind consumes data. The patient mind decodes truth. That's why patience is not passive. It's active stillness. It's holding space for probability to reveal itself. Swing trading is built on that paradox: to act rarely, but to think deeply. To prepare more than you participate. To let time, not tension, do the heavy lifting. The longer you trade, the more you see that success doesn't come from predicting movement, but from aligning with rhythm. Every market breathes expansion, contraction, expansion again. The trader's job is not to predict the breath, but to breathe with it. That's acceptance. That's flow. It's not romantic or mystical. It's just awareness in motion. You stop fighting to be right. You stop needing every trade to validate you. You begin to trade from presence, from a place where your decisions are guided by structure, not by the ghosts of past results. And here's what happens next. Your metrics start to change, not just your win rate, but your emotional volatility. The highs aren't as manic. The lows aren't as crushing. You start to flatten the curve of chaos inside you, because you realize that markets don't cause your suffering. Your resistance to them does. Losses stop feeling personal. Wins stop feeling divine. Both become data feedback, not fate. This is where true professionalism begins. The professional trader knows that the edge is never in the setup. It's in the state of mind you bring to the setup. When your inner world is noisy, even the best strategy will feel uncertain. When your inner world is still, even a simple system can deliver clarity. That stillness is the silent edge. The one you can't code, can't buy, can't back test. You can only become it. The silent edge is when patience stops being forced and starts being natural. When waiting doesn't feel like waiting anymore. When you can watch a perfect setup appear and still not take it because your context isn't right, because the structure doesn't align, because your emotions aren't neutral. That's not hesitation. That's mastery. Mastery is not taking every opportunity. It's taking only the ones that resonate with your calmest self. And the irony, the more patient you become, the less boredom you feel. Because boredom only exists when you're disconnected from purpose. When you understand that the waiting is the work, you stop trying to escape it. You start respecting it. You stop asking, when will the next trade come, and start asking, am I ready for when it does? That shift changes everything. Because now your focus moves from outcome to process, from fear to flow, from scarcity to sufficiency. You don't need the market to move to feel fulfilled. You're fulfilled by your ability to move with it when it's time. And slowly you begin to see trading for what it truly is: not a quest for profit, but a practice of presence. Every chart is a meditation. Every trade is a test of your awareness. Every loss is a lesson in humility. Every profit is a reminder that patience pays. In the end, the market gives everyone the same gift, the opportunity to know themselves. Most ignore it. A few awaken through it. So as you close this reflection, remember this. The goal is not to master the market. The goal is to master the mind that meets the market. When you no longer crave excitement, when you no longer chase patterns in noise, when you no longer trade to feel in control, you have already won. You've stepped beyond the cycle of fear and greed. You've entered the rare state where trading becomes peace in motion. You won't notice the exact day it happens. There will be no dramatic breakthrough, no sudden transformation, just a quiet realization in the middle of an ordinary session that you are calm, that you no longer need the market to give you something you already have within yourself. That's the moment you become free. That's the moment you trade not for money but for mastery. And mastery, unlike profit, cannot be lost. Because once your mind learns how to stay still in the middle of uncertainty, it carries that strength into every part of your life. Trading stops being a battlefield. It becomes a mirror of your awareness. So sit with the silence, respect the boredom, question your interpretations, and let acceptance guide you. In that stillness, you'll discover the edge that never fades, the edge of a mind at peace with the market's chaos. The longer you trade, the more you realize the market isn't testing your system, it's testing your state of mind. Every loss whispers a truth you've ignored. Every win tempts you to forget it. And in that dance between emotion and logic, you discover who you really are. The boredom, the fear, the need to interpret, they never disappear completely. But mastery isn't about eliminating them. It's about seeing them clearly and choosing not to obey. Because in the end, trading is not a game of prediction. It's a discipline of perception. And perception only sharpens in the mind that's quiet enough to listen. When you stop trying to control the market, you start mastering yourself. And when you master yourself, the market finally becomes simple, not easy, but simple. So as you close this reflection, remember you are not your last trade. You are not your P&L. You are the awareness behind it all. The market doesn't define you. It reveals you. And when you can look into that mirror without fear, you've already won, no matter what the chart says. Thank you for listening. This is Mind Over Markets. Stay patient, stay aware, and trade from stillness.